After what was a pulsating season of schoolboy football action, ISA have named all Manning and all DaCosta Cup All-Star teams for a showdown on January 14 at the National Stadium. Each squad is comprised of 22 players, and the champions, with Manning Cup winner Jamaica College and DaCosta Cup Kings Clarendon College, getting the bulk of the picks in their respective squads. Let's look at what the picks are. Rasika Rose, JC, Akeem Bernard, Mona High, 2 goalkeepers in the All Manning selection. Michael Graham, Romaine Burke, Xavier Davidson II, defenders from JC. Kingston College's Blaine Byam, then Donhue Mitchell from Mona High. Rashard Frankser from Stats completing the defenders. The forwards, Javier Lynch, JC, Makwana Aldridge, JC, DeJuan Whisper Richards from KC. Forwards in the midfield, well, forward Zane Pinnock from Mona High. Stats is Andre Salmon, Omar Reed, and Shaquan Satchwell. Then in the midfield, Haile Selassie's Jawan Payne, JC's Jamali Bennett, JC's Kevon Wilson, Mona's Damoy Whitfield. St. Catherine High, the School of the Prime Minister, have a selection, well, have an invitee, Mikhail Ellis in the midfield. And Stats have Nicoy Gale and Daniel Watson from Tivoli Gardens High School. The DaCosta Cup All-Stars, Clarendon College goalkeeper Romeo Daniels, the Stets custodian Moe Morgan, Central High's Anric Gordon, Clarendon College's Adrian McNeil, Devontae Hodges, Okemo Jones, Christopher Hull, Kahim Dixon, and Marcus Reed, all in there, plus Manchester High's Javane Lindsay and Dintil's Giovanni Affleck. Then Manchester has Unique Carnegie Mannings, or the Manning School, has Devontae Rodney, Jamalik Porter, Shamar Hamilton. Central High have Shane Gordon, Clarendon College, Malachi Douglas, and Theon Coopy. Edwin Allen have Clayton Peck. Fogar Road has Chadwick Woolcock, Glenmuir David Reed, and Manchester have Rashawn Reynolds. So the naming of any All-Star team, if you are playing darts or dominoes or Chinese skip and you name an All-Star team, you will court controversy because of who's named and who's omitted. And so we want to get the wisdom of 2 of our schoolboy football analysts to pick over these selections and make the case for those they feel deserve their call-up and those they believe are unlucky to have missed out. Returning to Chris Taylor and Ligier Williams. Chris, the Liverpool fan, who's, well, I can't say his crown is slipping because he has the League Cup crown and the FA Cup crown, but those are the Mickey Mouse Cup crowns. The big ones missed him last season, and he's throwing shade at Ligier, who's only leading the league. So I can agree with Chris in some respects, but I want to say, calm, old chap. There's a lot of the race to be run yet, and Arsenal will have their obstacles to collide with, I am sure, over the course of the season. All right, so I'm supporting both of you and criticizing both of you because I'm a Manchester United fan. Anyway, let's start with the man on the who's on Zoom. We have the Ligier, myself, and Lance here in studio. Chris, looking at the selection, what's good about the All Manning team? Let's start with that.
No surprise that Jamaica College have dominated the picks. I think the Manning Cup team is closer to what should have actually have been picked than the DaCosta Cup team. But yeah, no surprise coming. I was a little bit hurt that I noticed Xavier Gooden, the 15-year-old captain from St. Andrew Technical, was not chosen, not selected. I thought that was a big miss. I thought for him to lead a team like that to the final of the Manning Cup at 15 years of age and be such a solid defender that he certainly deserved a pick. I'm not sure. I didn't see a clause stating that based on the picks here, any of the players who would have been involved in the under-17 camp, which has just been selected, would have been omitted from this squad. So I would expect this squad to still be the best players represented in both leagues. And then from that, you know, you put in your clauses. So I was a little bit disappointed not to see him. I think he's a major omission. And I think that he would have actually have been in the starting 11 for me. Apart from that, I think it's thereabouts. It always depends on the formation that you're looking to play. Another player that I think would have felt hard done by missing out is Teshawn Mattis. I think that he certainly should have been in there. The KC midfielder who is very versatile, able to play on the wings, can play in the second forward position, as well as in the midfield, and had 14 assists. He was in the top 5, if not the top 3 of assist makers in the Manning Cup. So I thought that he should have been there. And his teammate Nashada Gibbs, even though he might not have made a start in 11, I thought that he could have gotten a look in, especially after scoring 15 goals in a season. Yes, he was overshadowed by Dejan Richards, but so was everybody else in the league. So I'm a little bit surprised that he was not added. Again, he's an under-17 player, and I'm not sure if that's the reason behind it. But yeah, those are the major omissions for me. I think Romarion Thomas, a good box-to-box midfielder from Mona, I thought might have been unlucky as well. Even from that central midfield role, was able to score 7 goals and have as many assists or 6 assists. So I thought both himself and Jamali Bennett from Jamaica College were probably the 2 standout box-to-box midfielders. And this is the thing, panel, George, Lance and Leger. I thought that what we would have seen is you're picking a 22-man squad. Why not give every position a fair record and have 2, in other words, a reserve team then? So the second 11, which means you would have had a reserve left back, right back, 2 centre backs, as well as maybe I guess the formation would have been a 4-3-3. So you would have a box-to-box, a number 6, as well as an attacking midfielder in there. But it seems to me like what the selectors went for are added forwards and midfielders, and only picked 1 left back and centre back, for example. So it kind of denied some of the other players who had good seasons of being included. Yeah,
Leger, Chris is disgruntled about some key omissions. He felt that given the strength of the seasons that those boys had, they ought to have been selected. Let me start. Well, I expect you to comment on that, make your own comment on that. But start here first. The weight of JC in the 22 for the Old Manning's team.
Well, I mean, I've mentioned previously, I think that Jamaica College has the strongest squad in all of schoolboy football. That showed. So it's no surprises that they have so many players. They won the competition, of course. They went far in the Champions Cup as well. So
is the 8 the right 8? The JC 8. Is the JC 8 the right 8?
Yes, I think so. I think so. All of the players that should have been represented were represented. They did get into the squad. I don't think any of the rest of them. Maybe Saviola Blake at the heart of their midfield, maybe just him, but I do think that the inclusions that they have as the number 6 position in Nicoy Gale from Stats had a more impressive season. So I think that it's touched it here and there, but I think they were well represented and rightfully so.
Right. Well, like Chris, do you have any grouses with any boy who may be sitting and watching this on TV who ought to be in the squad, Old Manning?
I agree with him in terms of Alexavier Gooden from Stats. I think he was one of the more outstanding centre-backs in Manning Cup, of course. And just a little bit of bias, I would have loved to see Kai Miles get into the squad. 7 goals, 3 assists for Campion, leading them to the second round for the first time since the early 90s. So maybe a little bit of bias, but I think he maybe could have gotten a squad inclusion, not starting level, but,
And again, George, it depends on the formation you're looking to play. Because, for example, they have Makwan Aldridge listed as a forward. And I don't see Makwan Aldridge as a centre forward. I think he's more attacking midfield. And I think Makwan going forward, I think what happened to JC is that they were not necessarily impressed by Makwan's work rate. So playing in that 3-man midfield role didn't really suit him, especially when you have the likes of Kavan Wilson in there, who's had an outstanding season.
So, but Chris, the better question is, the better question is, based on your clear explanation as far as I'm concerned, if we were to pick the side based on what you think the side should have been picked against, formation and structure, would Makwan Aldridge get in if you were going by position and excellence by position?
I think Makwan Aldridge would be battling for the bench position. I don't think he makes a starting lineup. Even though he produced well for JC, I'm a little bit disappointed based on last season and what he did for Kingston Technical. I wanted to see more from him. I wanted to see a better work rate and work ethic from Makwan Aldridge based on his ability, size, strength, skill, and so on. But I don't think he's a finisher, so I don't see him as a centre forward, and I don't think he's quick enough to play on the wing. So the position that Makwan is looking for in my team is as an attacking midfielder. Now I think his teammate Wilson battles him out of a starting place there. So where he's working for is between himself and Mikhail Ellis from St. Catherine, who had a very good season as well. So that is it for me. I no doubt about Makwan's talent and ability, but I think he needs to show that work rate on a much more regular basis, a much more consistent basis for me. But yeah, he probably just squeezes in, but not as a centre forward for me.
Yeah, all right, Leger, we want to move quickly to the DaCosta Cup, but I just want one comment from you about Chris's opinion about having just 2 players from one spot, one position. You have a 22-man squad. Why not just name 2 players, your first and second choice from each position on the field, so you have a more balanced 22. Do you agree with Chris's point?
Yes, I agree with him holistically, but I think you have to take into consideration that most of the players play multiple roles in schoolboy football, so it would be hard to pinpoint. Chris mentioned Macon Aldridge. He played 3 or 4 positions for Jamaica College alone, so I think it would be hard to pinpoint them to one position.
Yeah, I gather that there's more discrepancy in the All DaCosta Cup squad than the All Manning Cup squad. Could you expand on that?
There are so many. I'd like to start off with Messam, the captain of Glenmuir. I think Glenmuir are severely underrepresented in the whole team, because Glenmuir are a team that they lost one pivotal game against Edinburgh in the last 2-0. That's why they didn't go to the semi-finals. But if you take their season holistically, they played 17 games, kept 12 clean sheets, and their captain Messam was the key to that. You know, they play a very intricate tactical system. So when they have the ball, it turns into a 3 at the back, and he plays in the middle of that. So he's in charge of distribution, organization, and just general good defensive work. So I think he should have been in there. They have other players that could have been in there as well. So it was rough on Glenmuir, but yeah, but that's just a start. There are so many players that I feel like should have gotten in.
All right, Chris Leger is saying that's just a start.
Can
you continue?
Yeah, I certainly agree with him. Glenmuir didn't have enough representation. I was a little bit surprised that the St. Elizabeth goalkeeper got in. I don't think Morgan should be in there any at all. I think Stets were underperformed badly this season. I don't think that any of their players deserve to make an All DaCosta Cup team, and that's just the honest truth. I think if you're looking for a secondary keeper behind Romeo Daniels, it probably should be Gooden from Glenmuir. I thought Antoine Gooden was very good for Glenmuir. I thought Leon Ricketts wasn't bad for Central either, who made it all the way to the final. And in fact, in the semi-final, it was a really good performance by him to deny Manchester the many opportunities that they got. So a little bit surprised. I would even have put the Manny's goalkeeper, Shani Campbell, ahead of the States goalkeeper. So I thought that was a mistake there in selection. But yeah, Glenmuir, Zachary Messam, arguably the best centre-back we saw this season. I thought he definitely should have been there. I thought there were a lot of good centre-backs this season. I mean, Tajay Cooper as well from William Knibb. It's not very often that you see overlapping centre-backs. And Fabian McCarthy comes to mind when we think of that way back in the day of St. James High. I thought Tajay Cooper was easily one of the best centre-backs. William Knibb kept clean sheets right until they were in fact, they kept clean sheets right to, I think, the quarter-final round, which is where I thought that was broken. And I mean, he was a major part of that there, number 6. So I thought that was a bad omission from the selectors. I thought Javon Thompson from Edwin Allen, their captain and number 4, he had an excellent season as well, and he should have been in the mix. And also Javin Williams, how could I forget him from Mannings, who went all the way to the semi-finals. They're number 4. Now again, Javin Williams is an under-17 player, and I'm not sure if that has something to do with it. But certainly the centre-backs, I would not have gone for Hodges and McNeil. And it's ironic to say that considering Clarendon won the title. But I didn't think that those 2 centre-backs were the best in the league at all. And so I'm a bit surprised that they made their way in first choice. I would have liked to have seen some of the other centre-backs getting in. I thought those were bad misses. Orion Watson from Glenmuir, 17 goals, 10 assists. They're number 9. Again, bad omission. He's an under-17 player, but he's certainly based on his season. And with Glenmuir lifting the Ben Francis Cup, just losing 1 match all season, and he was a main part of that team. I would have liked to have seen him in there. I think he deserved to be. And Mark Lewis, who could forget him, another player from William Knibb. We're mentioning all the goal scorers. I'm not sure how Devontae Rodney from Mannings gets in. I'm befuddled by that. 1 goal, 7 assists, and as a winger in nowadays football, you have to be scoring goals. So I would have liked to have seen Mark Lewis, for example, getting 19 goals. And remember that this was coming off of 15 goals he had last season. So there's a level of consistency from him. And even though William Knibb didn't make it past the quarterfinals, I think you have to look at the high performances that he's produced 2 seasons in a row.
Would you say it's fair, though, Leger and Chris, that with the DaCosta Cup being so much more expansive by way of number of teams, and you may not have seen as much of DaCosta Cup football as you saw in Manning Cup football, that you are in a position to speak with as much authority with the DaCosta Cup selections as opposed to the Manning selections?
I mean, I think the games were split pretty evenly on SportsMax at least. So I think that we did see enough of them. And if you ask any scout in the world, they don't need more than 20 minutes of watching a player to know how good they are sometimes, barring nervousness, of course. But so I think certain players, I think you can see their quality. Certain players we see more than others, the ones that go far as well. So maybe some of the William Knibb players we didn't see as much. But we saw a lot of Glenmuir, and Glenmuir were omitted. So I think it's half and half, but I still do think there are a lot of changes to be made.
Chris, we're almost out of time. I wanted to ask you, Chris, about the selections from the Manning school. Given the season they had last year and what they did this year, could we get the graphic again, Mr. Producer, just quickly, just to refresh Chris's mind of the Manning's players who made it into the All DaCosta selection. So you have Porter and Hamilton up front, well, and Devontae Rodney. You mentioned Devontae Rodney already, but what about Porter and Hamilton for the Manning school? Do you think they deserved their selections?
Excellent season for Porter. 19 goals on a season, coming off of, I think, 6 he scored last year. I think he had a brilliant season. He definitely deserves to be in there. Shamar Hamilton is not a forward for me. I think he's more of a midfielder. If you're bringing him in as a forward, then he can't get in ahead of Mark Lewis from William Knibb. So I think that's where they went wrong. Shamar Hamilton had an okay season. I'm not sure if he makes it in, and Rodney definitely doesn't make it in for me. But Davin Williams from Manning should be in there, the centre back, and certainly Porter.
Yeah.
Outstanding season by him.
And Chris, it's a school that has come around relatively recently. So Fogar Road High gets a pick. Chadwick Woolcock. Can you tell my viewers what kind of player he is, and do you think he's deserving of his selection?
I think he's very lucky to get in. Yes, he comes from a competitive group, and Fogar Road caused a lot of trouble in the first round, more than they usually cause. But I still think that having not gone deeper into the tournament and really played against some of the better teams, I think it might have been a little bit premature to put Woolcock into this lineup with some of the other players and to leave out some players that I think might have been more deserving. I mean, if there was a place that was up for grabs and, you were looking for a player, then Woolcock, yes, did have a pretty good season, did help Fogar Road quite a bit. But we're still talking about the first round of the DaCosta Cup. Yeah. He didn't play against some of the best teams, and so he wasn't really tested.
Yeah.
But I would have had him as a mention and not necessarily in the starting 20.
Yeah, 15 seconds for you, Leger. So you know the players. Chris knows the players as well. Depending on who coaches them and what system they play, who wins this showdown inside the National Stadium not too long from now?
All Manning, because the talent is better and it will be easier to coach them as opposed to the DaCosta Cup.
Time's up. Chris, what say you, my friend?
DaCosta.
Why?
We have a nice split.
Why,
Chris?
We have
a nice split.
I like the diversity of the DaCosta Cup squad. I am a little bit more impressed with the attacking flavor of the DaCosta Cup team. So I think it will be interesting to see how they arrange the positions for the Manning Cup. But I'm going with the DaCosta. I think the chemistry is good there. And yeah, I think we might have a bit of argy-bargy with the Manning Cup. Who wants to take the ball? Who wants to be the dominant figure?
Hear you on that. Thank you very much for your time, Chris. All the best to you. Thank you, Leger. All right, we take a break here on the SportsMax Zone. Back with more after these. Thank you for watching SportsMax on YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click the notification bell to stay informed.